Everybody, Mithil Gandhi here, and so excited for today's episode. This is season 1, episode 4 of Mantegrity. Still don't have a tagline. It is something like healing mankind one at a time as we show up in honor, dignity, and integrity. So we can heal the people around us and heal the world. Work in progress. But today I have my friend, Courtney Jacobson, who I met through Atlas. And man, I'm so excited to talk to her about the container and the jail that we kind of put ourselves in as men, and maybe like the society pressure of what it is to be a man. Because she's coming from the place of having two brothers, growing up with two older brothers. And she's coming from a place of lots of male friends and her current partner as well, and her dad, who's a strong male figure in her life. And, before the podcast, we were chatting a lot about the extreme pressures that men need, feel in their day-to-day life to be something, to achieve something. Mm-hmm. So how do we break through that? How do we exist as men, and how do we feel peaceful in our day-to-day life, and still achieve the things that we want to achieve? Because as men, we all know, like, we want to create in this world. We want to create beautiful things, and we want to take care of our own. So welcome, Courtney.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. That was such a beautiful, you're really good at what you do. This is awesome. I'm excited to be here.
Already with the flattery.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think the thing that stood out to me most when we were talking was your experience with your father. So I would love to understand from a daughter's perspective of what it is to grow up with a strong male role model like your father.
Yeah. I'm very, very blessed to have come from an incredible family. I love my family. I'm obsessed with them. My parents are the most unconditionally loving people I've ever met, and my siblings and I are all super, super close. So I feel like I won the lottery for sure with my family. My dad and I have had a more complicated relationship. It's been healed now, but it definitely was a lot rockier growing up, and I can definitely attribute a lot of my own emotional baggage to the relationship dynamic that we had growing up. And a lot of it, I do think, came from the fact that he was simply doing the best that he could with what he knew. And fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of that just looked like completely suppressing his own emotions in order to work and, put food on the table. So he didn't have the freedom to show up as his authentic self, in his own worldview. He didn't have the freedom to do that because his role as a father was to, make the money, and instead of being like an emotionally available person, like my mom was there to be emotionally available, my dad was in the background making the money and making things happen. So, and I think a lot of people can relate to that dynamic of a traditional, more traditional household in that way. So Yeah, there was a lot of complexity growing up with relating to my dad and wanting to know how he felt about something and just the way that things would come up in, temper tantrums or explosions of anger because he literally never learned how to emote and emotionally regulate and do all the things that I feel like women have a lot of space and resources for and men don't. So, yeah, it's definitely complex, but my dad is so amazing, and now as a 60-year-old, he's learning how to do all of those things, and it's amazing, like, experiencing a lot of the resources that our generation has access to, the therapy and the personality quizzes and tests and, relationship dynamics, and, he's learning so much about himself. So, yeah, it's definitely I really feel for men in that, um, yeah, they feel like they have to be in that box and derive their self-worth from work, and it's complex for sure.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So what I heard was that your man was your dad was a man who was like the breadwinner of the house,
Mhm,
and he felt that there was no space to be someone that could be vulnerable, be someone that could emote in a way that
mhm,
would be healthy, and it would actually manifest in tantrums and anger sometimes.
mhm,
Um, and then he went through something in his life where at now 66, he has realized like, hey, like I want to show up different in this world. And so he went to therapy, and now he is this brand new guy with
mhm,
lots of space to emote and healing connections with his daughter and his friends, presumably his family, and starting to self discover and
mhm.
starting to understand who he is. And I guess the thing that comes up to me is it's never too late. You're
Mm,
the the story of your father is never too late, you know.
yeah.
That's freaking amazing. I Let's go back in time. So you feel that because he, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, because he was the breadwinner and he was someone that had to support his family, there was no room to be who he wanted to be or be someone that could show up in a way that could be emotionally available. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I see that in other men in my life, even now, like younger men as well. So I definitely, there's such a pattern there, and I don't know what the balance is to, like you said, to be in their power, creating what they want to create without that squashing their ability to be emotionally available and present and raw. I don't know what that balance looks like, but yeah, that's definitely present for
Yeah.
sure.
And what's driving that? Like, yes, there is this idea that you have to make money to survive. I don't see why it can't be both.
Mhm. I mean, just speaking from my experience with my fiance, I think what's really interesting, like, and I would love your thoughts on this more. What he experiences, is like he's creating a lot in his life. Like he's an extremely driven, ambitious, high output kind of person. And because of that, he has expanded the amount that's on his plate so much. It's become like this platter of responsibility. And it's good responsibility, but it's also heavy responsibility. He has like a lot of pressure riding on his shoulders day in and day out. which is amazing because he's creating such meaningful, significant things in the world. And how do you do that and also allow yourself to be emotionally present day in and day out? Because what he experiences is like, I need to shut down my emotions around this topic, this thing that came up, this trigger that just happened, because I have to be somewhere. I have to take this meeting. I have to get this thing done. So, like, being able to hold both at the same time is pretty wild. I don't know if you've experienced a similar thing where it's like, oh, I could be emotionally available and like check in with my emotions, talk to my fiance about what I'm feeling right now, or I could just power through and get the stuff done I need to get done. I feel like that's a daily basis kind of occurrence for him.
Yeah. And to be clear, I believe your husband or your fiance is in real estate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he's in real.
Okay, cool. And so, and this high output is buying houses, talking with clients, that kind of thing, right?
Absolutely.
So, and I forget, does he flip or
They do like creative finance, like seller financing.
like Jacob does?
Yes, yeah, yeah, like
Yeah.
Jacob.
Okay, cool. Cool. Um, yeah. So someone that is very, very high output, there's meetings all the time, there's calls all the time, there's deadlines, et cetera, et cetera. So
Mm.
I guess what comes up for me is um, I play small in that way. So I have had the space to emote and be someone that can sit with myself and journal and, talk to my friends, talk to my coaches, etc. Um, and so it actually makes me feel as a man, uh, someone that's not doing enough,
Mm.
interestingly, So that balance that you're talking about is like, yes, I just started this podcast and yes, I have a comedy show and whatever, but when I play the comparison game, which obviously we know there's always a loss there, no matter what, um, you feel like shit, I haven't done anything, I
Mm.
haven't done anything. I'm playing really small. So that's why I do feel like I do have space to be emotionally available to my partners, be emotionally available to my friends and family. So that's really what's going on for me in this moment, you know?
That's so fascinating
Yeah.
because I feel like, wow, that is so interesting. It almost seems like this is not what I believe, but it seems like the reality that you guys are experiencing is that you have to choose between one or the other.
Yeah.
And whoa, like, yeah, that's pretty profound to feel like
Yeah.
the direct like correlation and you have to sacrifice one thing to have another. Do you feel like you've actively been recognizing that in your life where you're like, oh, I could put more time towards this, but instead I'm actually going to journal and like check in with myself? Or it's not an active thing that happens on a day-to-day basis. It just overall, sure.
Yeah. Um, so really what's come up for me in the last few weeks because of Atlas and what I've learned there, I realized that I was so not in control of my time and energy, right? Like I would wake up whenever I felt like waking up. I would take multiple naps throughout the day because I was like, oh, I don't have enough energy to do anything. And I also never had a calendar, which was insanity. I was like, I don't even know how I function, but
What?
whatsoever. I didn't. It's like at 40 or at like 38, I finally have a calendar. It doesn't even make any sense. And so, um, because yeah, it was like I was always flying by the seat of my pants. Always, I had these like big visions and big dreams and whatever, but I never had control of my time, energy, and this idea that I can do everything. So like all this is like brand new to me, even though like I said, I've worked in comedy for a while, and I had partners um, within that space where I taught comedy, and we have a pretty big YouTube channel, and so we did all this stuff, and it was with partners. So like now that I'm doing this by myself, um, and I'm really, really dedicating time to it, I feel that yeah, it's something that I get to take control of, right? And I get to figure out exactly how far I can push it, you know. And I forgot the question. I'm in my heart right now. I have no idea what you're asking
Stay in
me.
the heart space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm
Oh
here.
my gosh. No,
Yeah,
that answers the question though,
yeah,
because it really is like, how is it going to balance out? And it's really just evolving for you right now because of
yeah,
redesign. It's like bringing awareness to things that you didn't see before, and
yeah,
however it's going to evolve is, that's up
yeah,
to you. This is, yeah, so that's amazing.
yeah. This idea of success as a man is so prevalent in my life,
Mhm.
Like I'm a pharmacist, and I just kind of go like, yeah, whatever, like that's not achievement, you know. And it's crazy. I have a doctorate degree, and I'm like, yeah, that's not enough, Like I need to be a real estate mogul. I need to be a media mogul, right? Like
Mhm.
these are the types of people that I grew up worshiping. Not worshiping, let's just say inspired by, right?
Mhm.
Um, like Jay-Z is one of my favorite freaking artists because he did come from nothing to something, right? And not even something, freaking billionaire. Like he sat down with Warren Buffett, and he has this like huge business portfolio that I had even saved. Someone made a little infographic of like his whole business portfolio, like the Rockaware and like his sports brand and all the artists that are under him. And I was just like, this is what I want my life to be like, Where I'm just like in every space that I love, you know.
Mhm.
Kevin Hart is another person that like I really aspire to be, right? Like he started from nothing. He's something, and he brings his whole city with him, right? Like all of his friends from back when. He brings them all with him. And every business he creates, he hires people that he feels want and need um, some sort of push in life, you know? And he still shows up in joy and happiness and inspiration. And again, the comparison game where I'm like almost 40. How am I going to get to that place? Or do I need to get to that place? You know?
Mhm. Have you,
Um, yeah,
go ahead.
that's that's what's coming up
Have
for
you asked
me.
yourself, um, I'm just curious, that last question, like, do you need to get to that place?
Yeah.
I'm,
Now that I have a mission rather than a vision, there is a vision, obviously, but the mission is almost what drives me more than the vision. The vision obviously will drive me because there is a place that I want to go where I am healing mankind and to the highest level, um, in arenas and talking to 30,000 people at a time, you know? Um, but the mission is so simple, right? The mission here is to touch one life at a time, listen to this podcast and be like, I can do something different today, you know? And so that's what can drive me instead of, I need to be big and famous and have all this money and all these businesses and whatever, right? So just grounding in that is where I am committed to being, you know? So whatever that manifests in, right? Like it could be big, it could be small. Um, and not stretching myself so thin that like I can't have this space to be someone that is there for their friends, there for their family, right? Like I think this idea of hustle culture is so prevalent. And I spent 10 years of my life not talking to anyone in my life. And I'm just like, nose to the ground, grind, and let's fucking do this. Like, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to, whatever, whatever, whatever. And I'm going to achieve this giant vision that I have. And in the end, what ended up happening is I isolated myself. I stressed myself out. I quit my job and I didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve. I had this goal of being like bringing JFL, which is that giant comedy festival in Canada, here to America. And I'm like, well, America is like comedy capital. Like, why do we not have like a giant festival? Fast forward, Netflix did it, before I could even like figure out all the stuff that was happening in my life to to do it. Um, and at the same time, I destroyed some good relationships in business because of the way I was showing up in this world. You know, someone that's like selfish, someone that is doesn't have the space to be empathetic, right? Someone that's like my vision, my goals, my everything. And in the end, it didn't get me to the place that I want to be. So now it's switched around. And I'm committed to, um, clearing all these people, having like clearing conversations and healing conversations with all my business partners that I've not shown up the best with, you know. So, and see where that leads us.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that you had like swung to one side of the pendulum of like,
Yeah,
extreme hustle grind. And now
yeah,
you kind of like try to recover from that on the other
yeah,
side of the spectrum. And
yeah,
now you're like with redesign, you're like finding the sweet spot.
yeah.
That's incredible.
Trying, yeah, yeah. Trying is lying, of course. I'm committed to doing that for sure.
Trying might be lying, but it's a really good thing to do. It's always
Oh
really
God,
good to try.
Courtney, the one thing I love about Atlas, is the inside jokes that we have with each other.
Yeah.
Like we use them as weapons all the time. It was so funny. We were going out like on the last night of the last weekend that we had there, and we're not allowed to drink obviously during the program, uh, but after we went out, had a few, and this guy was talking about like vision, like I have a vision for this night that I'm gonna like find this girl and like I'm gonna wow her and blah blah blah. And I was like, bro, you don't have vision, you got double vision.
Oh my God. Wow.
It's
That's too good.
funny.
Wow. Did he end up
Yeah,
meeting anybody?
I don't know. I was responsible when I went home, and because
Oh,
I had a flight at 8
wow.
a.m.
I hope he met his person. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. If
Freaking
he
love
was
that.
committed to the vision, he did. So we'll
Exactly,
see.
exactly. Yeah. Um, I want to circle back to, okay, so I know we talked about me for so long. That's crazy. Your father. So what was that whole time space where he wasn't showing up in a way that um was ideal, and like what was your experience of it as a daughter?
It was probably most of middle school, high school, maybe even elementary as well, but I have so many happy memories of the really really young years and playing with him and him being so present. And because I have four siblings, I think as all of them came along and the financial pressure increased, I think that's when he was more immersed in his work and prioritized that even more to provide even more for us. Obviously it's like unfathomable to the financial burden of five kids being homeschooled and like yeah, all it's a lot. So probably from around middle school to high school was when he was more distant. And my experience of that was, if I had to put it into a few words, was probably very conditional love.
Mm,
It really turned out, obviously, we have an incredible relationship now, but during that time period, there wasn't emotional awareness of what was going on. So it would look like a lot of my self-worth being tied to the grades and what my resume looked like and the different things that I achieved. And that was his way of not only showing up and helping, like helping me form a resume for this college application or helping me, with schoolwork in this area. He wanted to help me achieve, and because of that, I felt I was only lovable if I achieved a lot. Um, and he's also very entrepreneurial. And so all of us kids experienced a lot of entrepreneurship growing up. We were pushed to create or run businesses, and it was a lot of pressure for someone like me who is not at all, that's not where my gifts are by any means. I think I have like incredible gifts in life and they are fully on the other side of the spectrum. So yeah, a lot of it was feeling like completely misunderstood and very conditionally loved, and just a lot of like suppressing my own emotions because that's what was modeled for me. And yeah, feeling like I had to show up in a certain way just to be approved of, or I was walking on eggshells so that I wouldn't upset anyone. And being the middle child is really fascinating as well because the middle kid usually experiences a lot of empathizing and placating and peacemaking of everybody else. So yeah, it was really interesting. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to the conditional love of grades and achievements and whatnot, but that's kind of what it evolved to during my middle school, high school years.
interesting. So you're so what did your father do and for a living, and then what do you do entrepreneurially? Or was the entrepreneurial thing the living piece?
So he worked for Sprint for, I don't know, 25 plus years
Yeah.
when they were still a thing. And now he continues to work in a similar area. It's something within software development. Um, and it's really interesting because I always saw this entrepreneurial spark in him, but I think because he's so attached to security for extremely valid reasons, I think he has never pursued that entrepreneurial spirit in him. And
Mm,
I think because of that, it kind of played out in like him pushing that onto his kids.
yeah.
So we all had a lot going on um with entrepreneurship, not in a serious way by any means. Like we weren't like building $1 million businesses as children, but we were like, he's very innovative and inventive. So he'd have these ideas, of like, oh, how this is how you can start a neighborhood lawn mowing business. And we'd do that. And then there was another idea and we'd help there. So it was very much like, it's very much like in his spirit, I think, to pursue that. But he hasn't because of, I think, the pressure that he feels to obviously be the breadwinner and stay in that role of financial security. So that's kind of how the dynamic played out of like he has the secure roles in software development, but like underneath in his heart of hearts, he probably wants to be an entrepreneur and pursue all of the incredible ideas that uh come to him, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, he was stuck with this golden handcuff thing, and yet
Mhm.
he wanted to be the entrepreneur, someone that could take the risk, take those golden handcuffs off, and flourish, right? And
Absolutely.
because as a father, he couldn't do that because he's a responsibility for 4 kids and his wife. Um, he said, "Hey, Courtney, go do this. Like this is now your your thing. I want you to." And I think this is what happens with parents. It's like they want to make a better version of themselves, right?
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
for you, it showed up as lawn mowing business. Is that what I heard?
Yeah,
Okay.
my
What
brother
was that
started
like?
a lawn mowing business,
Okay.
and all my siblings, sisters included, and I all ran the lawn mowing business in high school. So like when my brothers went to college, we ran the business along with other, babysitting, nannying, meal prep gigs.
No shit.
Yeah, it
That's
was a
crazy.
lot. I know a lot, but yeah, it was a lot.
You had like a what the heck? It was like a lawn mowing slash babysitting slash meal prepping business.
Yeah.
What was it called?
I think at one point, so the lawn mowing business was called Grassmasters Plus.
Okay. I love that.
Because not only did we mow lawns, but we also provide other services like
Yeah.
the snow shoveling and leaf blowing and fertilizing. And then I think for like 2 seconds, our meal prep nannying business was called like Pets and Pastries or something.
Pets and
Um,
pastries.
yeah, because we'd help people. It was only like, I mean, obviously it was not a full-blown thing. It was a thing for middle school and high schoolers, but
Yeah.
yeah, we'd go over to people's houses and cook and clean and wash their kids and prep dinner for them. And yeah, it was great. I kind of hated
That's
it. I
cool.
like truly, truly hated it, but it taught me a lot. So,
Why did you hate it?
um, why did I hate it? Mostly because of the emotional consequences of it. Yeah, it was such, it drove such a wedge emotionally between me and my siblings because, as you know, working with people can be very complicated. Like having a working relationship with someone is one thing, having like a working and friendship, professional and non and personal friendship with people gets really messy really fast. And as silly as that seems to say, as that sounds with my siblings, that's definitely what I experienced. Like my dad and siblings and I having this sort of relationship around this business and the output and the achievement of this business and that being really complicated for like our personal lives, which I even experienced, of course, with my mom homeschooling us. Like having a mom that was your full-time teacher is also really trippy. So I think we all experienced a lot of that, the emotional complexities of doing business with your siblings. Yeah, definitely complicated.
So what drove a wedge was what, like the results you weren't getting, or the um I guess checkpoints you weren't hitting? Like what was it that was driving that wedge?
Yeah, I think it was just like differing goals for the business. I think my dad saw it as an opportunity for it to be more scaled. And I don't even know how my brothers felt about that, but obviously as like a girl in high school, I couldn't care less about lawn mowing. It was like a way for me to make really good money, so that I could do things that I loved, like hanging out with friends. And so there was a lot of like pressure to perform in a certain way because it would be like, oh, there's this opportunity to go knock on that person's door and say, hey, do you want me to, treat your lawn in this way, blow the leaves, blah, blah, blah. Great business opportunity. And for me, I'm sure I was like, I want to go hang out with my friends. Like, I don't want to get another client.
Yeah.
So it's just like that dynamic of like, someone else has these goals for my life. I'm just here to make some money so that I can go hang out with my girlfriends. And yeah, a lot of it just like the emotions were really heightened in those stages because of course my dad wanted us to be financially secure and stable. So it meant a lot to him, but it didn't mean a lot to us. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, just
It
different.
does, yeah, and it just brings up more questions. And I'm very fascinated because I'm very entrepreneurial, and
Yeah.
I've never had a business with my siblings,
Yeah,
or
don't
anything.
recommend it.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is like when the vision and mission are different between your father, your siblings, and you, things just go haywire. And seems like there was three men in the picture, and you didn't have any space to go, hey, I'm feeling like I don't want to do this, and I don't have this. I want to like make money just to hang out with my friends and flourish in that way, like in my relationships. What
Mhm.
stopped you from having that conversation, right? They always say like picking a business partner is like second to picking like a life partner, right? Because you have to have that communication. You have to be able to have those hard conversations. And if you can't, the business is gonna just flop, right? Um, so it seems like that's what happened, right? Like your
Mhm.
father had this huge vision of scaling it to whatever he thought it was gonna be. What do you know what your brother's missions were? And your sister, was your other sister involved or no?
Yeah, all of us were
Okay.
involved. So
So I
like
want to get into that too. I want to focus on, seems like I understand what your father wanted to be, like the Amazon of like freaking lawn mowing or whatever. Um, your brothers, did they both have the same vision, or did they also have different visions? Or did you even get to talk about vision at all?
honestly, I don't remember ever talking about that with them. And I think
Yeah.
part of the reason is just because I couldn't care less at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
think I would have never been like, so how do you feel about this business? Like I
Yeah.
was trying to get out of it. Um, yeah, so I don't know how they felt about it.
Okay. Yeah. And I can see now where the business didn't work out because you guys weren't
Yeah,
going for the same thing, right?
right.
Interesting. And okay, so what made you not have that hard conversation?
Honestly, the majority of it was just the fact that we weren't necessarily taught how to have hard conversations from a young age. And I think it's really, really interesting because my siblings and I grew up being very immersed in philosophy and theology and critical thinking skills and learning how to learn and just having a lot of emphasis put on intellect and yeah, speaking well, thinking well, networking well. But that doesn't necessarily translate to actually having like emotionally challenging conversations, which is
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. So from a young age, I feel like I was able to, not from a young age, I would say just in high school, I was able to have high level conversations with people, but I couldn't go there emotionally and actually reflect on what I was feeling and how to even express that to people and how to handle the consequences of a hard conversation or any of those things. Like I really was an extremely suppressed child for several reasons. And part of that is because we just modeled what our parents do and how
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
feel. And
Yeah.
because my dad, he suppressed a lot of his emotions, I think I just thought that was the only way to get through life was to suppress the emotions, go through the motions. So I probably didn't even think about having that conversation. Like, I actually hate mowing lawns. I have to, like,
Yeah.
I need to find a different way to make money because this is not fulfilling for my soul. It's not worth the emotional strain it puts on my, relationship with my siblings. It just like wasn't even a thought in my mind to have that conversation until I had an easy out, which is just like we would be done with the business when we went to college. So my
Wow.
older brothers, went to college, passed it on to us. When I went to college, I passed it on to my younger sisters. And at that point, I was completely aware, like, I don't want to do this anymore, of course. But yeah, it was that lack of introspection that wasn't modeled, I think. That's my guess, my best guess.
Your guess. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't ever
You
know.
don't ever
But
know.
it seems like that's what your heart is telling you. Like it wasn't modeled for me because my father was someone that had to. Like he was someone that because of the survival of the family, he needed to nose to the ground. Like let's
Mhm.
get this business done. Let's let's make as much money as we can so my family survives. The American story.
Yeah, for real.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and I wanted, okay, so then the question that came up for me is because you couldn't emote or have those hard conversations, what did emotional strain actually manifest in? Was it anger? Was it like resentment?
Mhm.
Was it like full out fights with your siblings and father, right? Like, what was it?
It was actually, for me, I think it manifested in resentment and depression. I think for my siblings, it varied for them. I think for some it was more anxiety. Um, but yeah, depression became like a huge, huge part of my life. In college, it like became an all-consuming part of my life. And I think I had experienced it to a degree as a kid, but I didn't know what it was until I like in college when I actually started going to therapy and learning about mental health. So, I imagine that it also is something that my dad has experienced, the anxiety and probably depression as well. Um, and he just didn't know. So yeah, that's how it came up for me emotionally, is like because the emotions were suppressed, I became angry and resentful and then just fully depressed.
Angry resentful. And it's interesting that it manifested in college because at that point the
Mhm.
business was not part of it anymore.
Yeah.
So it was just that residual um, idea that like I have all this stuff that I wanted to talk about and I just had no space to do it. And so now I'm angry, I'm resentful, and I'm depressed. I get the angry, resentful. I'm not understanding, and maybe I just don't have a thorough understanding of what depression is. So from your perspective, like what was it?
Where the depression came from?
Yeah,
What's interesting actually, and this is only because I've learned about it in therapy, is
yeah,
that anger is actually, um, when anger is suppressed, it actually manifests as depression. So people that experience the mental health issue of depression are actually deeply angry people that aren't emotionally comfortable feeling anger. Like their nervous system doesn't feel safe to feel that emotion. And so it manifests as depression instead of anger. Um,
Oh,
yeah. So which makes a lot of sense for me because I did have so much that I was angry about as a kid and so much that I just kept suppressing. And I think you're right. Like in college, it just continued to fester there. And I didn't have any outlet of like processing my emotions. So as things, continued to build as they do with like the nervous system that we've uh built for ourselves, it just compounded. And then, after a few different life events, that's it, manifested as a mental health disorder. But it really was a pattern of like suppression, suppression, suppression.
what were you angry about?
A lot of things, but I think mostly the pattern that comes up for me is not feeling seen, not feeling heard, um, not feeling like I can advocate for myself or get my needs met or um, have my opinion valued. It's a lot of those narratives of because I grew up as the middle child who often felt forgotten and looked over and unseen, that's where all this anger comes in of like, this is not how my brain works. Why do I have to do it this way? This is not what I want, but I can't advocate for myself or no one will stick up for me kind of thing. So all of those narratives play out and then um then I'll get real angry and bitter about it. But,
And so, what would um, being seen have looked like ideally?
as a kid,
Yeah,
um it's really interesting. I was talking to my therapist about this a few days ago.
yeah.
And um it's interesting because I very much relate to the idea or the type of kid that had a very different thinking brain. Not, I wouldn't consider myself neurodivergent by any means, but just more creative and less, I mean, most kids I think are this way, at least starting out. They're more creative and aren't quite as focused or hyper focused on being more scheduled and rigid and whatnot. So it started from a very young age of just feeling like this is not how my brain works. Like like all I want to do is just go play outside and be creative and make up all these plays and write these shows. And
Mm,
instead, I have to be inside. I have to sit down. I have to do this math homework. And like, that was bonkers to me. I was like, I cannot believe I live in a world where like it's more important for me to do math homework than be outdoors. Like it like crushed my soul from such a young age. And I think just that in general, feeling like even though my mom wanted to advocate for me and did, in fact, like she did tailor things to help me progress better. She tailored all of these different lessons to help each sibling, thrive in the best way that she knew. I still ultimately felt like so unseen because of the way the system was set up. So even if my mom was helping so much with this piece of homework or helped so much with this, part of my resume, I was still like, but why do I have to have a resume? Why do I have to do the homework? I felt like even beyond my own family unit, I was like, this is not the way the world should work. So I think that's why I have such a deep wounding of that, is because even though I did have parents that were amazing and trying really hard for all of us to thrive, I still felt like the system at large was like against me and not benefiting me. Um, so I don't know what that would have looked like as a kid to have felt seen. I don't know if it would have been like pulling me out of school and doing something totally different or um I don't know, but yeah, it was a lot of like not understanding the system that we were growing up in. Um and I like truly don't understand how parents do it. Like every parent is amazing for the effort that they put in. It's really wild to try and raise a kid with like a brand new brain that doesn't understand what's going on. And yeah, I don't know what I imagine, sorry, this is quite a long tangent, but I imagine the first step to really helping a child feel seen is like regular time on a daily basis, even to just sit down with them and ask like how you're doing, how you're feeling, what's coming up for you in a completely neutral space. Because I had a lot of like religious limitations and constrictions growing up. Um, so having the freedom to even express how I felt about certain things was very limited just from a religious, very conservative standpoint. So, yeah, it would have been interesting to experience that. But I guess the answer is I have no idea what that would have looked like, but yeah.
You answered the question. And let me try to summarize. So it seems like what would have been supportive for you is to have regular check-ins at I don't really know what age. Like what's coming up for me is like I know I'm right now in my life I don't want to have kids because yes, I am definitely selfish and I want to grow this whatever I'm doing and I feel like kids would hinder that. Maybe it's a story, maybe not. I don't know. But what's coming up for me is my brother. Like he has kids. He has a 2 10 month old and one that's 3 or almost 4. Um, and you just how do you check in with someone that young that doesn't really know what's right, what's wrong, like yeah, I don't know how early like these ideas of like I'm not doing what I want to do started. But that's what's scary about being a parent, right? It's just like how you could think you're doing the right thing and helping someone grow and helping and still it can mess somebody up, you know. Um it's a huge responsibility and I tip my hat to anyone that wants to do that. Not my cup of tea right now for sure. Um and I think what you said is there was multiple factors to not being to be seen is for someone to have checked in on you and go, hey, like, what do you want to do? Like, this idea of what's coming up for you is not something that is a question we ask ourselves or ask anyone else. That's totally Atlas stuff, right? Like, that's totally emotional training and understanding. Like, okay, like, there is a deeper question to ask in every moment, right? Like, what's coming up for you? So yeah, having that emotional training prior to having a kid is probably a great idea. Um, and because so then you would have been checked in on, and then it would have been like, you know, you would have had to also have had like sort of a model of like how to emote that as well. Like, hey, like I want to go play because I don't want this, that, and the other. And how a kid does that, I mean, they are just limitless expression. So maybe they just say what's on their mind, and you take it at face value and you don't control that. Again, parenting is so fucking hard because what if they say, no, I don't want to go to school? Well, obviously you don't. You're a kid, right? Like,
Mhm.
so how do you listen to that? What do you take seriously from somebody? And I think the second thing you said was there's like layers to this. Like there is the family unit, then there's society at large of like how the system is created.
Mhm.
And then there is this modeling that you keep referring to. Like the parent is the one that has to have responsibility to take control of their own emotions so that they can model properly. Um, yeah, that's a lot to put on someone that what 14, 16, right? I don't know when that happened to you, but and because you couldn't do all that, manifests in anger, resentment, depression.
Mhm.
Shit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons my partner and I we do want to have kids, but that is one of the reasons we are like living an alternative lifestyle. And like, even by the time we have kids, want to be living an even more alternative lifestyle than we are now, and raise them, if we ever have kids one day, to raise them like very untraditionally. So, which, could be bad on the other end of the spectrum. That could, you literally never know with parenting,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
the insanity of it. But I do feel really excited about the prospect of like being able to offer them a lifestyle that is hopefully, fingers crossed, exactly what they need to feel inspired and seen and loved unconditionally and free. Um, a lot of the things that most kids don't experience these days because kids aren't really taken seriously. Um, so we'll see. Hopefully it's not the case of, the the kids swinging to the other end of the spectrum, and then their kids needing to balance us out, really, but we'll see. Yeah, it's really fascinating.
What is an alternative lifestyle? Oh, sorry, I don't even know what that means.
It's like, so if you think of the regular, most traditional way of life as like, I don't know, a middle class American, it's usually, you know, the parents work all day, the kids go to school all day, and everybody comes home, does their homework, does their extracurriculars, busy, busy all day. Maybe dinner together as a family if you're super lucky, and then just like rinse and repeat. And it's this life that's like very disjointed, very um over committed, very like focused on the output and achievement and labels. Whereas um, Philip and I have talked more about having education tailored to the kid. So maybe one of our kids would want to be homeschooled. Maybe one of them would want to go to an outdoor school. Maybe one of them would just have like fully be tutored by one person. Maybe we would travel around to different countries and experience different forms of education depending on where we are. It's just like not the traditional public school for the kids, 9 to 5 for the parents. It's like it's very much tailored to whatever is freeing and inspiring for all parties involved. And it's crazy because it can look different for each kid. Like, I don't, I think homeschooling was amazing for me and my siblings up to a certain age. And then at some point, I just felt um, isolated from my friends because I was being schooled at home all day and they got to go to the public school or the private school together. So I think it having an alternative lifestyle and a non-traditional lifestyle is just, to me, being open to whatever evolution or progression needs to happen for the best, for like the thriving of the family unit, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. So bucking this idea of like all the traditional places you need to be in the regular society. And
Mhm.
again, it's like lifestyle design, right? Like
Yeah.
the kids, you're opening up this idea of what do you want as a kid, you know, and you get to decide from an early age. You're making them feel seen.
Mhm.
Full circle.
Yeah. Hopefully that's the goal, is that,
Yeah.
which I mean, I really think that is one lens to see our Dharma through, is what did I not experience or what did I not receive as a kid? Because that is what we are most programmed and most capable of giving to ourselves or the people around us or the future generations. Is like, because I experienced being so unseen as a kid, I feel deeply connected to that capability and being that for others, and hopefully offering that to my future kids, um, which is really exciting. That's one of my favorite lenses of like seeing life purpose through. Um, but yeah, we'll see.
Okay. So the thing that now strikes me is you and Phil went to a Hindu temple
Mhm.
for your Valentine's, and then you said something about Dharma. So we never talked about Hinduism and what it means to you. And you grew up Catholic or Christian?
Catholic, yeah.
Catholic. Okay, got you. And that's the one thing I forgot to say in terms of what created this jail for you. Like religion was also up there that you talked about.
Mhm.
Can you expand on that? As far as we understand what the family unit did, we understand what the business did, we understand what society did. What did religion do?
Um, Definitely. Oh man, that's like yeah, that's a topic for like a whole other 27 podcasts. But
Okay,
to
we'll have to
summarize,
come back to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
to if I can be short and sweet, I was raised
Reduction
in,
sauce.
what's that?
Reduction sauce.
Because based impossible.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I was raised in a very, very religious household. Um, Catholic, homeschooled, conservative, very, very sheltered. And it was hugely beneficial in so many ways. I feel like I'm a very spiritual, very grounded human because of it, and also experienced a lot of pain and confusion and just mental suffering and misery from the religious structures that I was raised in. And it mostly had to do with my own disposition and how I understood Catholicism, because I do truly think that Catholicism is a beautiful religion and can be lived out in a very healthy way, for the people that it works for. And for me, at this time in my life, which is always destined to change, I feel like because of how structured it is and how rigid it is, um, it didn't serve me and it wouldn't serve me now. And um, most of that was manifested just with a lot of, I don't want to be negative. I used to, when I talked about this from a very wounded place, I would talk about it as brainwashing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that still resonates, but I don't like the negative connotation that it also brings. But it was yeah, it was like deeply ingrained in every area of our lives. I didn't even know how to understand the world and myself without the lens of Catholicism for a long, long time. Um, so yeah, it manifested in different ways. Whether it was like having to wear certain clothes and dress a certain way, or not being able to have certain relation, like we weren't allowed to date for most of our lives, and um a lot of, the traditions of prayer and rituals and really, really regular services and regular prayer. And yeah, it was really, really intense. But I also, up until like 4 years ago, was completely obsessed with it. Like I was planning on being a nun. I was planning on like
Ah,
fully committing my life
wow.
in every way to like going to a convent and just being a nun and praying for the rest of my life. So yeah, it was fully, fully, fully my identity until I was like 21, 22. Yeah,
That's incredible.
yeah.
And then, so when did you get into Hinduism or
I wouldn't
the
say,
idea?
yeah, I'm not even into Hinduism.
Okay,
I just love exploring different religions, and
okay,
um I loved going to visit the temple yesterday. That was so cool. And there's also a Buddhist temple in Austin that I really want to check out. So that's something I'm extremely grateful for is I feel like because of such an intensely religious upbringing, I do have like such a comfort to a spiritual disposition and a spiritual outlook on life, which brings me so much joy and entertainment and meaning. So my worldview has like pretty radically changed since then.
yeah,
But it still does incorporate like believing in a higher power that is, love and intelligence and pure consciousness. And I really, really deeply resonate right now with The Map of Consciousness by David Hawkins. I don't know if you've ever read it, but
no,
it's similar to Eckhart Tolle's viewpoint as well. Um, but yeah, I think because I grew up in such a religious household, I'll probably never subscribe to a certain religious belief system. If I do someday, that's awesome. But right now, I'm just like in the thick of exploring all the things and appreciating all the things and appreciating all the different like fractals of ways that God is like, manifest through all different types of religions and beliefs and people and cultures. And um, yeah, it's a very, I would say it's the more common spiritual disposition these days is to just be like, yeah, I love it all. It's all nice.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
but it's true. That's how I feel right now is like I do truly believe that we're all part of the one higher power, and it's been a really fruitful, really beautiful belief system for me right now. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Love the reduction class. Definitely another episode because I don't, growing
Mhm.
up Hindu, I don't really understand Catholicism at all,
Mm.
and how it impacts all these different pillars in life, like the family unit, the father,
Yeah,
the everything. So we're gonna bookmark that next episode for sure.
for sure.
Um, I mean, I'm very satisfied. Any closing thoughts and like things that are coming up for you right now?
Only that I am so grateful that you're doing this. Truly, like there are so few men and people in the world that are going out of their way to provide a platform and a space for men to be seen and heard. And it's really refreshing. And you really truly have a gift of like holding space for people and understanding people. It's really incredible. I feel like you are absolutely the perfect person to be creating this space for men and to be on this mission. Like you seem extremely aligned with your life's purpose right now. And I'm just so grateful that you exist and that it's happening and that I get to help contribute in any way I can. So thank you for doing
You
this.
make me cry, Jesus. Sorry.
Seriously, it's profound. It's really going to impact so many people.
Thank you.
So,
And I can receive that from this space rather than the space I was in a couple weeks ago, which was the space of validation. Like, oh yes, like give me these compliments. I love it,
mm,
like, and it's more like not validation, it's more like, yes, you're aligned with my mission and my vision, and
mm,
I feel supported, you know. So thank you so much.
yeah,
And
thank
thank you
you.
for taking the time. I appreciate you very much.
Yeah.
This has been episode 4, Mantegrity, and we're signing off.
Woo.